You just got $1 trillion. Not a million, not a billion, a trillion, with a T. But here's the catch. You have 24 hours to spend every last cent, or it all disappears. Easy, right? Because by the end of this, you're going to understand something about money that most people never grasp in their entire lifetime. And it might just change how you think about your own retirement plan. Here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll try to blow this trillion on the obvious stuff: cars, yachts, mansions. Then we'll go bigger: real estate, whole cities. Then we'll try buying influence: politicians, media, even a country. After that, we'll see what happens when you try to actually do good with it. And by the end, I'll show you what this whole thought experiment teaches us about real money, real wealth, and why most folks over 40 are thinking about it the wrong way. All right, let's start spending. You walk into the nearest exotic car dealership. You grab a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a McLaren. You know what? Just buy the whole dealership. $12 million. Done. Feels good, right? Except, to actually spend $1 trillion in 24 hours, you'd need to buy out that entire dealership every single second of the day. Let that sink in. Every single second. So, we go bigger. Hire 100 people, send them across the world, tell them to grab the 100 most expensive yachts on the market. Toss each of them $1 million bonus for their trouble. That's about 40 billion. Then buy the biggest cruise ship ever built, fill it to capacity, pay everyone's ticket, hand out Rolexes like party favors, buy every NBA team and have them play pickup games on the deck. Fly in Snoop, Katy Perry, Beyonce, then send them to the International Space Station on a SpaceX rocket, 55 million per seat. You've spent a fortune. You've barely made a dent. So you think, okay, real estate, that's where rich people park money. The most expensive home ever sold in America was about $240 million. Sounds insane, but for you, with $1 trillion in the bank, spending $240 million is the equivalent of an average person spending $60. $60 on a house. Forget single homes. Buy all of New York City. The whole island of Manhattan, more or less, runs about $1.3 trillion. You can't quite afford the whole thing, but you can buy every vacant unit in the city. 33,000 of them. Hire 33,000 agents, pay each a $100,000 commission. Done by lunch. But you're still loaded, so you fly to the Middle East, buy a private jet for every day of the year along the way, and you start commissioning mega projects: the world's biggest picture frame, the tallest tower ever built, artificial islands shaped like continents. You buy every single one of them. You still have money left. So now you start thinking, forget real estate, buy a country. Greenland's mineral reserves are valued around 200 billion. Greenland says it's not for sale, so you buy fighter jets, aircraft carriers, a private army. Suddenly, Greenland is very much for sale. But here's where things get interesting. Because once you start moving this kind of money, governments notice. So, you do what any trillionaire would do. You buy the politicians, the whole Senate, the whole House, the president. 7.2 billion, and American politics is yours. Cheap, honestly. Except, and this is the part most people miss, money influences politics. It doesn't always decide it. Look around. The candidates who spend the most don't always win. The richest man in the world dropped millions on a single state election and lost. $1 trillion gives you access to almost anything. But public opinion? Culture? That's harder to buy than you'd think. So, you try to buy that too. Every major newspaper, every TV network. Global advertising spend for an entire year is around $1 trillion. You could run one solid week of non-stop propaganda. 3 billion a day. Done. And if people are still mad, time for philanthropy. The good guy move. You try to pay down the national debt. America's 36 trillion in the hole, growing by 2 trillion a year. You go to the official government donation website, yes, that exists, and try to wire over 200 billion. Turns out the maximum donation is $1 million. You just bought Uncle Sam a bag of screws, so you pivot. Medical debt. Charities can erase about $100 of medical debt for every dollar donated. With 2.2 billion, you could wipe out every unpaid medical bill in the United States. World hunger? The UN says 40 billion a year ends it. You can afford that. Student loans? 1.7 trillion. Too big. And the moment universities hear a trillionaire's paying tuition, they jack up the prices anyway. You start to realize philanthropy is harder than it looks. So you buy another yacht. And here's where I want you to stop and really think with me. Because this is the lesson. $1 trillion is so much money that even with 24 hours and zero limits, you can't reasonably spend it all on yourself. The math doesn't work. 37% of Americans can't cover a $400 surprise expense. As a trillionaire, your passive income earns you $400 every tenth of a second. The median net worth for someone under 35 is around $39,000. You could wipe with $100 bills for the rest of your life and not feel it. And that's the point I want you to take home tonight, especially if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and worried you started too late. Wealth isn't really about the number. It's about what the number lets you do, and more importantly, what it lets you stop doing. The trillionaire in this story can't enjoy any of it because he's racing the clock. He's spending for the sake of spending, and honestly, that's how a lot of folks treat their paychecks too. Money in, money out, no plan, no purpose. But if you flip that, if you give your money a job, if you let it compound, if you stop trying to look rich and start trying to be free, you don't need $1 trillion. You don't even need 10 million. Most people who actually feel wealthy in retirement got there with steady index funds, a paid-off house, a Roth IRA they didn't touch, and a budget that matched their values. That's it. That's the secret. No yachts required. So, here's your next step. Forget the trillion. Look at your real number. What does your version of enough actually look like? Run the math this week. How much do you need invested to cover your basic expenses for the rest of your life? Most folks have never actually done that calculation, and it's the single most clarifying thing you can do for your money. If this gave you a new way to think about wealth, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop a comment telling me what you'd actually do with $1 trillion. I read them all, and if there's a money topic you want me to break down next, retirement catch-up, Roth conversions, real estate, crypto, anything, let me know down below. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your money, and it'll take care of you. Now that we've walked through the fantasy, I want to slow down and do something most finance videos skip. I want to actually break down the math of what $1 trillion means, because until you feel it in your bones, the lesson at the end of this video won't land the way it should. So, let's build this up properly. By the end of this section, you should be able to picture, in real terms, the difference between a million, a billion, and a trillion. And more importantly, you should start to see why the numbers you deal with in your own retirement account behave very differently than most people assume. Here's the simplest way I know to explain it. If I told you to count to 1 million, one number per second, no breaks, no sleep, it would take you about 11.5 days. Annoying, but doable in theory. Now, if I told you to count to 1 billion at that same pace, one number per second, it would take you almost 32 years. Stop and let that sit. 32 years of counting every second, day and night. And $1 trillion at one number per second? Almost 32,000 years. That's older than recorded human history. That's before written language. That's before farming. 1 million seconds is 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. 1 trillion seconds takes you back to the last ice age. Same words, wildly different worlds. Now, here's why this matters for you, sitting at home, thinking about your 401k or your IRA or the house you're trying to pay off before retirement. Most of us hear the word millionaire and we picture private jets, we picture yachts, we picture the lifestyle of the people we saw burning cash in the first part of this video. But a millionaire, a real, actual millionaire with $1 million to their name, is not living that life. Not even close. $1 million invested in a basic, boring index fund, drawing it down at the standard 4% rule, gives you about $40,000 a year before taxes. That's a modest middle-class income. That's not a yacht. That's groceries, a paid-off house, maybe a yearly vacation if you're careful. This is the trick our brains play on us. We lump rich into one big category. Million, billion, trillion. They all sound like a lot, but the gap between them is not linear. It's not even close to linear. The gap between a million and a billion is 1,000 times. The gap between a billion and a trillion is another 1,000 times. So when you hear that some of the wealthiest people on Earth have net worths approaching $1 trillion, what you're really hearing is that they have 1,000,000 times more money than someone with $1 million. Not double, not 10 times, 1,000,000 times. That's the scale we're talking about. And here's the part I want you to really sit with. The financial goals of an ordinary person and the financial goals of a billionaire are not the same game. They're not even the same sport. A billionaire is playing power, influence, and legacy. You and me, we're playing freedom. We're playing peace of mind. We're playing, can I stop trading my time for money before my body gives out? Those are radically different objectives, and the strategies that work for one don't work for the other. A billionaire can take wild swings, lose 90% in a bad bet, and still be fine. You can't. I can't. Most people watching this can't. And that's not a weakness. That's just reality. Your strategy has to match your actual situation, not the situation of someone on the cover of Forbes. In the next section, I want to take this math and apply it to something practical, what I call your personal trillion, because every one of us, in our own life, has a number that functions the same way a trillion functions for a hypothetical billionaire. It's the number where money stops being a stressor and starts being a tool. And almost nobody has actually sat down and figured out what that number is for them. That's where we're going next. All right, let's talk about your personal trillion. Here's what I mean by that. For the hypothetical billionaire in our story, $1 trillion is the number where money stops being a constraint. He can't spend it fast enough. He can't even give it away fast enough. The money has outgrown his ability to need anything from it. It's just there, generating more of itself, sitting in accounts he'll never look at. You have a version of that number too. It's just smaller, a lot smaller. And the beautiful thing is, for most people watching this, it's actually within reach if you understand how to calculate it and how to work toward it. So let me walk you through how to figure out your own number. And I'm going to keep this simple because the financial industry has spent decades making this stuff sound more complicated than it actually is. The first thing you need is what I call your floor. Your floor is the minimum amount of money you need every month to keep the lights on, food on the table, the mortgage or rent paid, basic healthcare, transportation, and a little breathing room. Not the lifestyle you dream about. The lifestyle that, if everything else fell apart, would still let you live with dignity. Write that number down. For a lot of folks in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, that floor lands somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 a month, depending on where you live and whether your house is paid off. That's your survival number. Now multiply that monthly number by 12 to get your annual floor. Let's say, for the sake of example, yours comes out to $50,000 a year. That's a fairly common middle-class floor in America today. Here's where the magic happens. To generate $50,000 a year of passive income, money that comes in without you working, using the standard 4% withdrawal rule that financial planners have used for decades, you need to multiply your annual number by 25. So, 50,000 times 25 is $1,250,000 invested. That is your personal trillion. That's the number where, if you stopped working tomorrow, your money would keep paying your bills for the rest of your life. And statistically, never run out. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, $1.25 million? I don't have $1.25 million. I'm 53 years old and I've got maybe 150,000 in my 401k. I hear you. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad. I'm telling you this because once you know the target, you can actually aim at it. Most people are wandering around in the financial woods with no map and no compass, hoping things just work out. That's not a plan. That's a wish. And here's the second piece. And this is the part that gives me hope for almost everyone I talk to in this age range. Your personal trillion is not a fixed number. It moves. It moves down when you pay off debt, because debt is a monthly bill you no longer have to fund. It moves down when you pay off your house, because that mortgage payment disappears from your floor. It moves down when you downsize, when you move to a lower cost area, when you simplify. Let me show you what I mean with real numbers. Say your floor right now is $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. That means your personal trillion is $1.5 million invested. But say you pay off your house over the next 10 years and that knocks $1,500 a month off your floor. Now your floor is $3,500 a month or $42,000 a year. Your personal trillion just dropped from $1.5 million to $1,050,000. You just shaved nearly $500,000 off your retirement target without earning another dollar. You did it by reducing what you need. This is the lever almost nobody talks about. Everyone obsesses over the investment side. Pick the right fund, time the market, chase the hot stock, dabble in crypto, find the next Amazon. And look, the investment side matters. We'll get to it. But the spending side, the floor side, is something you control directly. Today, this month, you don't need the market's permission to lower your expenses. You don't need a financial advisor. You just need a clear head and an honest look at what your money is actually doing. So, here's your homework before we move on. 2 numbers. Your current monthly floor. What it actually costs you to live a basic, dignified life right now. And your future floor. What it'll cost you to live that same life if your house is paid off and your kids are grown. Multiply each by 12, then by 25. You now have 2 versions of your personal trillion. The number you'd need today and the number you'd need at retirement. In the next section, we're going to take these numbers and look at the realistic paths to get there. Starting later in life, which is the situation a lot of you are actually in. Because here's the truth. Nobody on financial TikTok wants to admit, starting at 50 is different than starting at 25. The math is different, the strategy is different, and there are some specific moves available to people over 50 that younger investors literally cannot use. That's where we're headed next. Let's get into the part that actually matters for most of you watching. What to do if you're starting later. Because I know the standard financial advice out there assumes you began investing at 22 with a steady salary, no kids, no divorce, no medical bills, no layoffs, no real life. That's not how it works for most folks. Most of us hit our 40s or 50s and suddenly look up and realize the retirement clock is louder than we expected. Here's the good news, and I mean this. The tax code in the United States actually favors late starters in some specific ways that most people never take advantage of. We're going to walk through them one by one, so by the end of this section, you'll know exactly which levers you can pull that someone in their 20s literally cannot. The first one is the catch-up contribution. Once you turn 50, the IRS lets you put extra money into your retirement accounts every year, above and beyond what younger people are allowed to contribute. For a 401k, that's an additional $7,500 a year on top of the standard limit. For an IRA, it's an extra $1,000. And starting recently, if you're between 60 and 63, that 401k catch-up jumps even higher, over $11,000 extra. Those numbers may sound small in isolation, but stack them up over 10 or 15 years of compounding, and we're talking about 6 figures of additional retirement money. 6 figures that you, as someone over 50, are uniquely allowed to put away. Most people in their 50s don't max this out. Many don't even know it exists. If your employer offers a 401k match, that's also free money sitting on the table. I cannot tell you how many folks I've spoken with who are leaving a 3 or 4% match unclaimed because they didn't realize it was there. That's a guaranteed, instant return. Better than any stock pick, better than any crypto play, better than anything the market can offer you. Take the match. Always take the match. The second lever is what I call the home equity decision. If you own your home and you've been in it for a while, there's a very real chance you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. That equity is not making you any money. It just sits there, looking pretty on your net worth statement, while your mortgage chugs along. Now, I'm not telling you to rip equity out and throw it into the market. That's a fast way to lose your house. But what I am telling you is that the decision of whether to downsize, relocate, or pay off the mortgage aggressively is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make in this decade of your life. A paid-off house at 65 is worth more than most stock portfolios because it permanently lowers your floor. And remember, from the last section, lowering your floor lowers your personal trillion. The third lever is Social Security timing. This one is wildly misunderstood. You can start collecting Social Security as early as 62, but the longer you wait, up to age 70, the bigger your monthly check becomes for the rest of your life. We're talking about a difference of roughly 77% more per month if you delay from 62 to 70. That's not a small bump. That's life-changing money over a 20 or 30-year retirement. Now, for some people, claiming early makes sense. Health issues, immediate need, certain spousal situations. But the default move that a lot of folks make, taking it the second they're eligible, is often the wrong call for someone in decent health with other income sources. The fourth lever is Roth conversions during low-income years. This one's a little more advanced, but stay with me because it's powerful. If you retire at, say, 63 or 64, and you have a few years before Social Security and required minimum distributions kick in, you have a window where your taxable income might be unusually low. Those are golden years for converting money from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, paying the tax now at a low rate so that all future growth and all future withdrawals are tax-free. Done right, this can save you tens of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes. Done wrong, it can push you into a higher bracket and cost you. This is a place where talking to a fee-only financial planner, not a commission-based salesperson, actually pays for itself. And the fifth lever, the one nobody wants to hear, but I'd be a bad teacher if I didn't say it. Working a little longer matters more than almost anything else you can do. Every additional year you work has 3 effects at once. You add another year of contributions and employer match, you give your existing investments another year to compound, and you subtract 1 year from the time your portfolio has to support you in retirement. 3 benefits stacked on top of each other. If retirement at 65 feels impossible, retirement at 67 or 68 often becomes very achievable. Not because 2 extra years is magic, but because of how that math triples up. Now I want to be careful here. I'm not saying you have to work until you drop. I'm saying that the choice between retiring at 62 with constant money stress versus retiring at 67 with genuine peace of mind is a choice worth thinking about clearly. And a lot of folks haven't run the actual numbers on what those 2 scenarios look like for them. They just have a vague idea of "I want out as soon as possible," which is understandable, but it's not a plan. So, here's where we are. You know what your personal trillion is from the last section. You now know 5 specific levers available to you as someone over 50. Catch-up contributions, home equity decisions, Social Security timing, Roth conversions, and working a little longer. Each of these moves the needle. Stacked together, they can completely transform your retirement picture in 10 or 15 years. In the next section, I want to talk about where you actually put the money once you start contributing more. Because contributing is only half the battle. What you invest in matters just as much. And there's a lot of noise out there right now, especially with crypto and AI stocks and meme trades, that's pulling people in their 50s into investments that are completely wrong for their stage of life. We'll sort the signal from the noise next. All right, let's talk about where the money actually goes once you're contributing more. Because here's the thing, putting money into a retirement account is step one, but the account itself is just a container. It's the bucket. What you put inside the bucket is what determines whether your money grows, stagnates, or gets wiped out at the worst possible time. And I want to be straight with you, because there's a lot of noise pulling people in your age range into investments that are wrong, flat wrong, for where you are in life. So, by the end of this section, you should have a clear mental model for what belongs in your portfolio after 50, what doesn't, and why. Let's start with the foundation. The single most important concept in investing as you get older is what's called sequence of returns risk. That's a fancy term, but the idea is simple. When you're 25 and the market drops 50%, you shrug, you keep buying, and you let time heal everything. When you're 63 and the market drops 50% in the first year of your retirement, you can be in serious trouble because now you're pulling money out of a shrinking pile to live on, and there's a real risk you never recover. Same market crash, completely different outcomes based purely on timing. This is why the textbook advice to just buy and hold stocks forever starts to break down as you approach retirement. It's not that stocks are bad, it's that being 100% in stocks at 65 is a different bet than being 100% in stocks at 35. The math punishes you harder if it goes wrong. So what's the answer? For most people in their 50s and 60s, the answer is something boring and unsexy and that nobody is going to put on a YouTube thumbnail. It's a balanced mix of low-cost index funds, some stocks, some bonds, adjusted based on how close you are to actually needing the money. The classic rule of thumb is to subtract your age from 110 or 120 and put that percentage in stocks with the rest in bonds. So, at 60, you might be around 50 to 60% stocks, 40 to 50% bonds. Not exciting, but it works. It has worked for decades. It will likely keep working. Now, let's talk about the noise, because I know what some of you are thinking. But what about crypto? What about AI stocks? My nephew made $40,000 on some coin last year. Shouldn't I be in that? Here's my honest answer, and I'm going to give it to you the way a trusted friend would, not the way a YouTube algorithm wants me to. Crypto and speculative tech bets are not investments in the traditional sense. They're speculation. They might pay off enormously. They might go to zero. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can tell you with certainty which way it's going. Anyone who claims they can is selling you something. If you want to allocate a small slice of your money, and I mean small, like 1 to 5% of your investable assets, to higher risk bets like crypto or individual tech stocks, I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. Some folks call this their play money or their fun bucket, but the rule is this: that money has to be money you can lose entirely without affecting your retirement plan. If losing it changes when you can retire or how you'll live in retirement, it's too much. Period. The mistake I see over and over again with folks in their 50s is taking a meaningful chunk of their retirement savings, 20, 30, sometimes 50%, and dumping it into whatever the hot trend is. They saw the gains other people made, they're worried they started late, and they're trying to make up for lost time with a home run swing. I understand the impulse, but that's not investing. That's gambling with money you can't afford to lose. And the time you'd need to recover from a major loss at this stage of life, you may not have it. The same principle applies to AI stocks right now. AI is real. AI is going to change a lot of things. But the question of which specific companies will win and which will be the next pets.com from the dot-com bubble, that's a question nobody can answer with confidence. If you want exposure to AI, you can get it through a total stock market index fund because the big AI players are already in there. You don't have to pick winners. The index picks them for you automatically, and it dumps the losers too. Real estate is another area worth touching on. For some people, owning a rental property in retirement makes sense. Steady income, inflation protection, an asset you understand. For other people, becoming a landlord at 65 is a nightmare. Broken toilets at midnight, tenants who don't pay, repairs that eat your returns. There's a middle ground called REITs, real estate investment trusts, that give you exposure to real estate without having to manage anything yourself. You can buy them inside your retirement account just like a stock. For most folks who want real estate in their portfolio without the headaches, REITs are the simpler answer. And then there's the question of cash. How much cash should you hold? As a working investor, the standard advice is 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. As someone approaching or in retirement, that number goes up. Most planners suggest 1 to 2 years of expenses in cash or cash equivalents, money market funds, short-term treasuries, high-yield savings. The reason is simple. If the market crashes, you don't want to be forced to sell your investments at the bottom to pay your bills. That cash buffer lets you ride out a downturn without panic selling. So, let me put it all together. A reasonable portfolio for someone in their 50s or 60s might look something like this: a core of low-cost, broadly diversified index funds, total stock market, total bond market, maybe an international fund, a cash buffer covering 1 to 2 years of expenses, maybe a small slice in REITs if you want real estate exposure. And if you can't help yourself, a tiny play money allocation, 1 to 5%, for whatever speculative thing you find interesting. That's it. That's the whole game. What's not on this list? Day trading. Option strategies your brother-in-law swears by. Whole life insurance sold as an investment. Annuities pushed by commission salesmen. Penny stocks. Most actively managed mutual funds with 2% fees eating your returns every year. These are the products designed to make someone money. And that someone usually isn't you. In the next section, I want to take a step back from the math and talk about the psychology of all this. Because honestly, knowing what to do is only half the battle. The other half is being able to stick with the plan when the market gets ugly, when your friends are bragging about crypto gains, when the financial news is screaming that the world is ending. That's where most plans actually fail. Not in the spreadsheet, but in the human sitting in front of the spreadsheet. That's where we're going next. Now, let's talk about the part of this whole conversation that almost nobody covers. And honestly, it's where most retirement plans actually fall apart. It's not the math. It's not the tax code. It's not picking the right fund. It's the human being sitting in front of the screen, trying to stay calm when everything around them is screaming. I want to spend this section on the psychology of money because if you don't understand how your own brain works around this stuff, the best plan in the world won't save you. I've watched people with great strategies blow themselves up because they couldn't handle one bad year. And I've watched people with mediocre strategies do just fine because they had the discipline to stay in their seat. So let's break this down honestly. The first psychological trap, and the one I see destroy more retirements than any market crash, is what's called recency bias. Recency bias means your brain assumes whatever just happened is going to keep happening. If the market's been going up for 2 years, your brain says it'll keep going up forever. If the market just crashed, your brain says it's never coming back. Both feelings are wrong. Both feelings are extremely powerful. And both feelings will trick you into making the worst possible move at the worst possible time. The classic version of this is the person who finally builds up the courage to start investing right at the top of a long bull market, watches their account drop 30% in the first 6 months, panics, sells everything, locks in the loss, and then sits in cash for the next decade while the market quietly recovers and goes on to new highs. That person didn't lose money because the market was bad. They lost money because their brain couldn't handle the swing. The plan was fine. The human broke the plan. The second trap is comparison. And I want to talk to you like a friend here because this one is brutal in your 50s and 60s. You're going to hear stories. Your brother-in-law bought Bitcoin in 2015 and now he's retired in Costa Rica. Your old college roommate got into Nvidia early and his account is up 400%. Your neighbor flipped houses through the 2010s and has a beach property. And you're sitting there with your boring index funds thinking, did I do this wrong? You didn't do it wrong. You're just not hearing about all the people who tried the same things and lost everything. They don't post about it. They don't show up at the barbecue bragging about the 70% of their savings they dumped into a coin that went to zero. Survivorship bias means you only ever see the winners. The losers go quiet. And if you let those visible winners pull you off your plan in your late 50s, you can do permanent damage to your retirement that you simply don't have time to recover from. The third trap is what I call the all or nothing fallacy. This is the belief that you either need to be aggressive and chase huge returns or you've already failed. People in their 50s who feel behind often swing wildly between two extremes, either taking insane risks to catch up or freezing entirely and doing nothing because they feel hopeless. Both of those are reactions to fear, not strategy. The truth is, steady, boring, consistent contributions to diversified index funds, combined with the catch-up provisions we talked about earlier, can do an enormous amount of work in 10 to 15 years. You don't need a home run. You need to keep showing up at the plate. The fourth trap is information overload, especially today. You can open your phone right now and find 10 different financial experts telling you 10 different things. Buy gold, sell gold. Stocks are overvalued. Stocks are going to the moon. Real estate is dead. Real estate is the only true wealth. Crypto is the future. Crypto is a scam. Every one of these people sounds confident. Every one of them has a chart to back it up. And the result is that the average person watching this stuff ends up paralyzed, doing nothing, or worse, jumping from strategy to strategy every 6 months, never letting any single approach actually work. Here's what I want you to internalize. The people who actually build wealth over a lifetime are almost never the ones with the most sophisticated strategies. They're the ones with the most boring, repeatable behaviors, automatic contributions, tax-advantaged accounts, diversified investments, not panicking when the news gets loud, not chasing whatever was hot last quarter, just showing up month after month, decade after decade with the same plan. That sounds simple. It is simple. But simple is not the same as easy. Easy would be if your brain didn't fight you every step of the way. Easy would be if the financial media wasn't designed to make you anxious, so you click on more videos and watch more ads. Easy would be if your own emotions stopped second-guessing every move. None of that is the world we live in. So, the discipline isn't in knowing what to do. The discipline is in continuing to do it when your gut is begging you to do something else. Here's a practical exercise I want you to try. Write down, today, on paper, the answer to this question. What would have to happen in the market for me to change my plan? Be specific. Is it a 20% drop? 30? A specific news event? A particular politician winning an election? Write it down, because here's what you'll find when you actually try to do this. Most of the time, you can't come up with a good answer. And that's the point. If you can't define in advance what would justify changing your strategy, then you shouldn't change it based on how you feel in the moment. Feelings are not a strategy, they're weather. The other thing I want you to do is limit your exposure to financial noise. This sounds counterintuitive coming from someone who makes financial videos, but hear me out. Checking your portfolio every day is one of the worst things you can do for your long-term returns. Studies have shown that the more frequently people look at their investments, the worse their decisions tend to be. Set a schedule, once a quarter, twice a year, whatever works, and look at the portfolio then, rebalance if needed, then close the app and go live your life. The same goes for financial news. There is almost nothing that gets reported on a daily basis that should change a long-term retirement plan. Almost nothing. The day-to-day market chatter is entertainment, not information. And consuming too much of it doesn't make you a better investor. It makes you a more anxious one, and anxious investors make worse decisions. In the next section, we're going to bring all of this together. The math, the levers, the portfolio construction, the psychology, and I want to give you a clear, simple framework for what your next 90 days should look like, no matter where you're starting from. Because at the end of the day, this only matters if it leads to action. And the difference between people who retire with peace of mind and people who don't is almost never about how much they earned. It's about what they actually did, consistently, over time. That's where we're headed next. All right, let's bring this all together into something you can actually do. Because everything we've talked about, the math, the levers, the portfolio, the psychology, none of it matters if it stays in your head. Knowledge that doesn't turn into action is just entertainment. And I'd rather you walk away from this video with 3 concrete moves than 30 interesting ideas. So, I want to give you a 90-day framework, 3 months, broken into 3 pieces, 1 per month. By the end of it, no matter where you're starting, you'll be in a measurably better financial position than you are right now. And more importantly, you'll have built the foundation for everything else to compound on top of. Let's call this month 1 clarity. The whole goal of month 1 is to know exactly where you stand. Not vaguely, not approximately, exactly. Because you cannot navigate to a destination if you don't know where you're starting from. And I'd say at least 80% of the folks I talk to in this age range genuinely don't know their own numbers. Here's what you do. Sit down, one evening, maybe a Sunday afternoon, somewhere quiet, and pull together 4 numbers. First, your total net worth. Add up everything you own. Retirement accounts, savings, home equity if you own, vehicles if they're paid off, anything of real value. Then subtract everything you owe. Mortgage, car loans, credit cards, student loans, medical debt. The number you're left with, positive or negative, is your starting line. Don't judge it. Don't feel bad about it. Just write it down. You can't improve what you won't measure. Second, your monthly cash flow. What's coming in after taxes and what's actually going out. Most people dramatically underestimate their expenses because they only think about the obvious ones. Rent, mortgage, car payment. They forget the subscriptions, the eating out, the gifts, the kids, the impulse Amazon orders at 11 p.m. Pull 3 months of bank statements and just add it up honestly. The number will probably surprise you. That's good. That's the point. Third, your floor number, the one we calculated in section 3, your actual cost of living for a dignified life, multiplied by 12, multiplied by 25. That's your personal trillion. Write it down next to your current net worth, and you can immediately see the gap between where you are and where you need to be. Fourth, your retirement account contributions. Are you contributing to a 401k? Are you getting the full employer match? Do you have an IRA open? When was the last time you actually logged in and looked at it? If you don't even have login credentials anymore, and a lot of folks don't, recovering those is part of month 1. That's it. Month 1 is just knowing your numbers. No big moves, no new accounts, no reallocation, just clarity. You'd be amazed how much more powerful you feel once you actually have these 4 numbers on a single piece of paper in front of you. Now let's go to month 2, optimization. Month 2 is where you start fixing the leaks and pulling the easy levers. The first thing you do is take a hard look at the cash flow you measured last month and find 3 to 5 recurring expenses you can cut or reduce without it hurting your quality of life. Streaming services you don't watch, subscriptions you forgot about, the insurance policy you haven't shopped in 8 years that's quietly gone up every renewal, the cell phone plan that costs 3 times what it needs to. Every dollar you free up here is a dollar you can redirect into your retirement contributions, which gets the compounding engine running harder. The second thing you do in month 2 is make sure you're capturing every employer match available to you. If your 401k match is 4% and you're only contributing 2, you're literally leaving free money on the table every single paycheck. Adjust your contribution percentage today, not Monday. Today. It takes about 10 minutes through your employer's HR portal. The third move in month 2 is to open or fund a Roth IRA if you don't already have one. Even if you can only put $50 a month into it right now, the account exists, it's open, and you're building the habit. The catch-up contribution limits we talked about earlier apply here too, so once you're 50, you can put in an extra $1,000 a year on top of the standard limit. The fourth move, and this one's optional but powerful, is to schedule one meeting with a fee-only fiduciary financial planner. Not a commission-based advisor at a big brokerage, not someone selling you products. A fee-only planner charges you a flat rate for advice, and they're legally obligated to act in your interest. One good 2-hour conversation can clarify your tax strategy, your withdrawal plan, and your Roth conversion windows in a way that more than pays for itself. Now we get to month 3, automation and defense. Month 3 is about making your plan run without you. Because the truth is, willpower fails, discipline wavers, life gets busy. The only way to make sure the right things happen consistently is to take yourself out of the loop and let systems do the work. So, this month, you automate your contributions. Every paycheck, the right amount goes into your retirement accounts before you ever see it. You don't decide each month whether to invest. That decision is already made. Same for your emergency fund, same for any extra payments toward your mortgage if that's part of your plan. You set it once, and then you forget about it. You also set up your defense. This is the stuff nobody likes to think about, but it matters more as you get older. Make sure you have an up-to-date will. Make sure your beneficiaries on your retirement accounts are correct. And I cannot tell you how many people still have an ex-spouse listed because they never updated it after a divorce. Make sure you have a power of attorney document. Make sure your spouse or a trusted family member knows where the important documents are and how to access the accounts if something happens to you. These aren't fun conversations, but they're love letters to the people you'll leave behind. Doing them now, while you're healthy and clear-headed, is one of the most generous things you can do for your family. And then, finally, you set a review cadence. Once a quarter, you sit down for 30 minutes, you check the 4 numbers from month 1, and you see how they've moved. That's it. You don't need to obsess. You don't need to check daily. 4 times a year is enough to stay on track and catch any drift before it becomes a problem. That's the 90-day framework. Month 1, clarity. Month 2, optimization. Month 3, automation and defense. By the end of those 3 months, you will have done more for your financial future than most people do in 5 years of vague intention. And here's the thing I want you to really hear before we get to our final section. None of this is about perfection. You're not going to do all of this flawlessly. You're going to forget steps, get busy, miss a month, that's fine. The folks who win at this aren't the ones who execute perfectly. They're the ones who, when they fall off the plan, get back on it the next week instead of giving up entirely. Progress, not perfection. Direction, not speed. In our final section, I want to zoom all the way back out. Back to that trillionaire from the opening, the one trying desperately to spend money he could never use. And connect everything we've talked about to what actually matters in a life. Because at the end of the day, this whole conversation isn't really about money. It never was. Let's bring this whole thing home. Remember the trillionaire from the beginning of this video? The one racing against the clock, buying yachts and Lamborghinis and entire countries, trying desperately to get rid of money he could never possibly use? I want you to picture him one more time. Standing in his garage full of supercars he'll never drive. On the deck of a yacht he'll never sleep on. Surrounded by mansions he'll never live in, with more money than he could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. And 24 hours to make it disappear. Here's what I want you to notice. That man, in our story, is not free. He's the opposite of free. He's a prisoner of the clock. He's frantic. He's exhausted. He's making worse and worse decisions because the pressure is crushing him. And the deeper irony, the part that should stick with you, is that this is also how a lot of people live with far less money. The dollar amount changes. The behavior doesn't. Because the truth is, the relationship most people have with money isn't really about how much they have. It's about how they feel when they think about it. And you can have $1 million and feel poor. You can have $50,000 and feel at peace. I've met both kinds of people, and I'll tell you, the second group is happier. Every single time. What we've been building toward across this entire video is the idea that wealth is not a number. Wealth is a state. It's the state of having enough that money stops dictating your choices. It's the state of being able to say no to work you hate, yes to time with your family, yes to that trip you've been putting off, no to that toxic obligation you've been dragging around for years. Real wealth is the freedom to align your life with your values. Nothing more, nothing less. And the path to that state, for the overwhelming majority of people, doesn't run through trillions. It doesn't run through Lamborghinis. It doesn't run through Greenland. It runs through small, deliberate, repeated choices made over decades. It runs through knowing your numbers. It runs through using the levers available to you. It runs through investing simply, automating ruthlessly, and refusing to panic when the world gets loud. It runs through paying off the house, maxing the match, doing the Roth conversion in the low-income year, showing up every month, even when it's boring. So, let me give you the recap of what we covered, because I want you to leave with the whole picture in your head. We started with the trillion-dollar thought experiment to break your brain a little, to show you that wealth at the extreme is not what most people imagine, and that even infinite money can't buy a meaningful life if you don't know what you want. Then we did the real math, so you could feel the difference between a million, a billion, and a trillion in your bones. We calculated your personal trillion, your floor times 12 times 25, which is the number where your money pays your bills without you. We walked through the 5 levers available to anyone over 50. Catch-up contributions, home equity decisions, social security timing, Roth conversions, and the simple power of working a little longer. We built a portfolio framework that's boring, diversified, and proven to work, and we cut through the noise on crypto, AI stocks, and other shiny objects pulling people in your age range into bets they can't afford to lose. We talked about the psychology, recency bias, comparison, the all-or-nothing trap, information overload, and why your own brain is often the biggest threat to your retirement. And we laid out a 90-day plan: clarity in month 1, optimization in month 2, automation and defense in month 3. That's the whole game. That's it. Now here are your real next steps, not vague, specific. This week, sit down and calculate your floor, your real monthly cost of living for a dignified life. Multiply by 12. Multiply by 25. Write that number on a piece of paper and put it somewhere you'll see it. That's your target. This month, log into your 401k and check your contribution percentage. If you're not getting the full employer match, fix it today. If you're over 50 and not using the catch-up contribution, fix that too. This quarter, have one honest conversation with your spouse or your closest family member about money. Where you are, where you want to be, what enough looks like for the two of you. Most couples have never actually had this conversation, and it's the single most clarifying thing you can do for your shared future. And this year, if you haven't already, sit down with a fee-only fiduciary financial planner for one session. Not a salesperson, not your bank. A flat-fee fiduciary. 2 hours of their time can save you tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes. That's it. That's the whole path. It's not glamorous. It's not going to make for a viral video, but it works. It has worked for generations of regular people who quietly built real freedom while their flashier neighbors chased the next get-rich-quick trend into the ground. If this video helped you see your own situation a little more clearly, do me a favor, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more folks in your age range who could use this kind of honest conversation. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because I'm putting out videos like this every week on retirement, investing, real estate, taxes, and how to think clearly about money in a world that profits from your confusion. And drop a comment below telling me one thing. What's the single biggest financial question you're sitting with right now? The one that keeps you up at night? I read every comment, and the topics that come up the most often become the next videos I make. If you've got a friend, a sibling, a spouse who needs to hear this message, somebody who's been feeling behind or anxious or like they missed their shot, please share this video with them. You might be the one person who hands them the map they've been looking for. And listen, wherever you are right now, whatever your starting number is, whatever mistakes you've made or years you feel like you've lost, you are not too late. The best day to start was 20 years ago. The second best day is today. You don't need $1 trillion. You don't need 1 million. You need a clear target, a simple plan, and the discipline to keep showing up. That's all anybody who's ever built real freedom has ever done. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your money, and it'll take care of you.